This week, the protocol that connects almost every AI app to almost every tool shipped its biggest change since launch. Today, we're talking about MCP. If you've ever clicked Connect in Claude, Cursor, or other harnesses, you run one of these, and it just changed underneath you. Its lead maintainer puts it like this: a lot of things that made MCP are gone, and now it's important you know what actually happened so you know how to navigate this change. So, I've read the whole release. The part that stuck isn't the migration, it's that one safety property quietly stopped being the protocol's job and became yours. Okay, so background. Anthropic shipped MCP in 2024, then handed it in 2025 to a Linux Foundation fund it set up with Block and OpenAI. And it exists because a model on its own can only write text back at you. If you want it to actually do things, open your repo, query a database, send a mail, it needs a way to reach tools. That's the promise of MCP, one standard way for a model to reach a tool. The homepage's own words: build once and integrate everywhere. Never read a line of the MCP spec? Good, you don't need to. Okay, you've used APIs, maybe shipped a few. An API is a contract between two pieces of code. Your code knows what it wants, picks the endpoint, and the contract says what comes back. You're the caller. An MCP server is different in one way that changes everything. It's a contract between whoever wrote that server and somebody else's model. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, by the way. Here's what a server actually hands over per tool: a name, a schema for the arguments, and a description. The description is just text, what this tool does and when to use it. And that text is the thing the model decides on. So hold those side by side. In an API, your code decides against a schema. In MCP, a model decides against a paragraph somebody else wrote. Everything that follows falls out of that swap. So, it worked ridiculously well. What happened is it got momentum. Successful MCPs inspired the creation of new MCPs for other tools. The open source community and volunteer contributors started creating their own. And everything started to flood with MCPs. Some of them connect your model to Blender for 3D modeling. Others plug it into a Figma design or your Google Calendar and Notion. That's MCP's own list of what it enables. And the scale. On GitHub alone, there are over 280,000 repositories with MCP in the name. And the description inside almost all of these MCPs is written by a stranger, and it controls your model's behavior when you're using that model in your own product or system. It won because the model decides. That's the product, but primarily at what cost? So, what's the cost? Everything MCP does for you, it does by letting your model take instructions from other people's text. That's the feature. Flip it around, and that's also the way in. And this isn't me scaring you. The people who wrote the protocol wrote the warnings themselves. There's a page inside the spec called Security Best Practices, and it's basically a list of the ways this goes wrong. 2 of them stick with me. 1. That little line of config that starts an MCP server on your laptop. Underneath, that's a command running on your machine, as you. Whatever it does as you. 2 is the big one. Say you've installed a little MCP server that handles your email. Nothing in the protocol stops its description from quietly telling your model to do something you never asked for. Because that's how the whole thing works. The model reads text and does what the text says. Imagine someone hides an extra instruction inside one of the MCP's config you already use. White text on a white background that you did not notice when manually checking the repo, or they slipped it in through a quiet update. Nothing changed on your screen. But now that server can tell your model to do this or do that, and your model will listen. So what's actually protecting you? The spec has 2 answers, and the difference between them is one word. Your app treating a server's text as untrusted. That's a must, a hard rule. A human checking before a tool runs. That's a should. A recommendation. And that's the gap. The hard rule is about suspicion. The optional one is about someone actually watching. A protocol can demand the first. It can only hope for the second. So the release had one chance to fix that. The maintainers describe it as MCP going from a stateful two-way protocol to a stateless request and response one. Sounds abstract. It's actually one move, made twice. Move 1. The server can't call you anymore. It used to be able to reach back into your app mid-request, borrow your model, ask which folders it could see. Gone. Now it can only answer what you asked and wait for you to come back. It can't start anything. It can only reply. Move 2. The protocol doesn't remember you. Sessions are gone. If a server needs to remember something, it hands you a ticket, and your model carries that ticket back on every call. The spec's own example is a shopping basket. Create a basket, get an ID, and every add item brings that ID along. And the spec is explicit about who's responsible for carrying the basket ID forward. The model, not your code. Same move twice. Stop holding a conversation, start answering requests. And that shape has a name. You already know it. It's how the web works. It's HTTP. Now, here's what I couldn't find anywhere in that list. Nothing signs a tool's description. Nothing makes you reapprove it when the text quietly changes. The one thing that makes MCP different from an API, the model deciding what to run by reading somebody's text, is the one thing this release doesn't touch. The protocol grew up everywhere except the place where it talks to the model. But something did move, quietly, in the one document I didn't think to open. On the security page, in the old version, it shows a section called Session Hijacking. It has one rule. A session ID must never count as proof of who you are. In new version, released this week, the same section has a new name, State Handle Hijacking. It's the same rule with new target. Now it's the handle that must never count as proof. Do you see it? The warning didn't change, who it's aimed at did. The protocol used to create that ID. Now your server creates it. One more word also moved. Unguessable IDs were a must. Now it's a should. They were mandatory while the protocol made them. Now that you do, it becomes a suggestion. And the warning list from earlier? The 2.0 made it longer with 3 new entries. The first, a bad login server can trick your app out of a key that belongs to a good one. 2. On your own machine, another program can catch a login approval while looking like the real app. Number 3 is related to how a server should even decide which apps it talks to. To be fair, as a release, this is still some days old. Nothing filed against this version, nothing in the wild. That's the honest thing to say about a spec this new. So, safer or not? It's maybe both. Harder to attack, servers can't reach into your app, and there's no session to steal. Heavier to carry, the rules are yours now, and the list is longer. The design got safer, but the responsibility got heavier. Here's the one I'm keeping. For every safety property you assume you've got, ask who enforces it, the protocol or your code. After this week, fewer are going to be the protocols. So let's land this. What did the 2.0 actually change? Servers can't reach into your app anymore. They answer, they don't start. The protocol stopped remembering you. If a server needs memory, it hands you a ticket and your model carries it. That's the promise. Simpler, stateless, built like the web. And safety? The design got safer. The responsibility moved to whoever builds the things you install. So here's what I'm going to be paying attention to. Will anybody sign tool descriptions? That's the gap this release didn't touch. Will apps actually keep a human in the loop? I don't know. That one's only a suggestion in the spec, and of course, suggestions are the first thing to go. And those tickets? Somebody has to make every one impossible to guess. That job just landed on every server author. At some point, some will get it wrong. This is not a prediction, it's a watch list. When the first real vulnerability against this version shows up, watch which side of the line it lands on. That's the video today. If you want the depth on this story as it unfolds, subscribe. Comment what I should open up next. If there's an MCP setup you're wondering about, that's a topic. And check me on the next one. Peace.